Mud, thick, thin, deep or shallow, with rocks or with roots, or simply in its own raw natural state, can be a very difficult material to manage.
Yeah, mud is either one of two things for me. It's either slow, slippy and frustrating, or it's great when you master it and it's loads of fun. It comes down to preparation and skills, I think.
Yeah. So in this video, we'll be covering the tools, the techniques, and indeed the mindset to tackle this beautiful trail condition, because if you can get it right, it can be every bit as fun as riding hot, dry, dusty trails.
And the sun's come out.
Now, a lot of the time, you're going to have to be dealing with changing ground conditions as you move down the hill. Up here, up in the sun, kind of tightly packed trees, it's soaking up all the water. The soils are quite thin and the ground conditions are actually quite dry. However, move down there, the ground conditions are way different. Deeper soils, more organic material, and generally darker woods. There's less light getting in here, so that water is going to be hanging around on the track much more. Now, before we actually get into any on-track riding techniques, there's a few key equipment issues that need to be tackled. First up is the mud guard. They come in long, short or medium kind of length.
And I prefer to use one of the smaller front mud guards and some eyewear, so sunglasses more than anything. And I use these blue lenses or clear lenses in the dark conditions in winter in the woods, so you don't need to use tinted lenses.
You just like to look the part of the dog.
I do like these.
I prefer the full goggle actually, which is a good seal on it, and yeah, I try to keep as much kind of dirt and muck out as possible because yeah, it tends to kind of get gritty on my eyes, so I've got to protect them.
So trying to flow up the climbs is really going to help on an e-bike as well. Trying to keep that rear tyre gripping, so I'm riding in the smooth part of the trail, which is right in the middle on this trail. I'm trying to keep a nice smooth cadence so I don't sort of slide the back end out. I've actually backed it off a power level here, so I'm on eMTB, so I can meter my power nicely with that rear tyre, keep it gripping.
Very often, however, you actually need to increase your cadence, up your tempo, to give you the momentum to get up the changes in slope and stop you sliding. Don, riding in the mud is all about momentum, right? You simply cannot avoid the collisions. You've got to keep your speed all the way down the hill. So, I mean, there's many ways to do that, right?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about flow. So when you haven't got much grip, you've got to try and make the most of it. So in a section like this, we've got a downhill section. There's kind of deep bits of mud, and then there's dry bits, and then there's roots. And I'm really trying to open up the corners. So in the dry, I could be aggressive. I could throw it inside, use that bit as a berm. But in the wet, it's more of a muddy rut.
So what you're saying there, I'm looking at this track here, and there's three different options. There's an inside, there's a middle, and there's an outside. So you're using this outside to set yourself up for the next part of the track. Tyres, what a massive subject. Now, of all the things I can tell you about mud technique, getting a mud tyre is #1 on the list. No mud tyre equals no grip. Now, what a lot of people get wrong is the fact that they don't understand that if you get a good mud tyre, you can actually ride as you would in normal conditions. So that mud tyre is quite more aggressive than a normal tyre, kind of longer tread patterns. But, you know, it really allows you to cut in. So yeah, I think #1 is learn how to trust your mud tyre and you'll get away with almost everything, right?
So I think that's the one big disadvantage of plus tyres, as most e-bikes come with. If they're too wide, I think they float on mud quite a lot, so I'd much rather have a slightly thinner tyre with those deep tread that's going to really dig into that mud.
Yeah, and obviously if you've got conditions such as a field or super full-on mud conditions, you can actually use a really aggressive, really kind of nasty full-on spike, such as a Specialized Storm or a Schwalbe Dirty Dan, and they really do cut through because they're really But
then they're not as good all round, of course. They're not going to be as good in
because what happens then, if the knobs are too tall, when you get into kind of rocks and roots, they get a little bit unwieldy,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it depends on like the ground conditions. So if it's full-on mud, you can go for the full-on spike. Whereas if the ground conditions are changing with rocks and roots, you need to kind of have something like a Magic Mary or the Hillbilly, which we've got on our bikes here. So what happens if you take the Highline? To me, there seems a lot of positives. There seems drier ground, smoother terrain, plus what happens when it comes after that corner?
Well, you open up the right-hander, and then you'll flow from A up there to B down there, In deep mud sections or puddles, sometimes it's good to try and float the front tyre. So using a manual technique, so you don't stuff the front tyre in, which could result in an over the bars, especially if that is softer and deeper than it looks. But make sure you get the timing right or it's going to be really embarrassing. Sometimes I'll just stay behind the bike, heels down, to drive the bike through.
And also, don't forget that if you actually see water on the ground, that normally means there's a hard bottom underneath there, which is going to give you more grip than the deep, muddy kind of ground to the sides. Now, one of the main reasons that people are quite reluctant to use mud tyres on non-e-bikes is because of the increased drag and the kind of how difficult it is to actually pedal a mud tyre around. Whereas on an e-bike, that's not such an issue. They do give magic grip, but they do actually have quite a drain on your battery life. So yeah, for me, summing up kind of riding in mud, I would say that tyres, mudguard, eyewear are really key, but also I think a really positive mental approach to riding in the mud. You need to be confident. What's your top tips, Don?
Just mellowing out my riding really, so trying to put in less aggressive riding and just ride smooth lines if I can. Also look for a bit of support or a bit of dry dirt if there is any out there. I've also suffered with chain suck in the past, so make sure your drive chain is nice and clean and lubed before you ride, and obviously clean your bike afterwards. I think you should check out these pro tips from the 2-time world downhill champion Fabian Burrell, so click up there for that one. Give us a thumbs up if you like riding, whatever the conditions, and hit that subscribe button.